The objectives of the speech.
I certainly will, Mr. Toastmaster. This evening, David's objectives are to understand that a story can be entertaining yet display moral values, to create a new story that offers a lesson or moral, to tell the story using the skills developed in the previous two projects. And he is working from the storytelling manual.
Tonight, David's speech is a good measure of pleasure. Tonight, David's going to take a humorous look at a dangerous vice.
I'm struggling with a friend of mine, a close friend, who I feel might be slipping down a slope towards trouble. Can we talk about a touchy subject? I believe pleasure without measure is a very dangerous treasure. Good evening, Toastmasters and fun-loving friends. Are you ready for a humorous look at the power of self-discipline? Let me begin with a story that started on a summer picnic, like we'll be attending tomorrow, probably. And at this picnic, it was crashed by a bunch of uninvited guests. They gathered around the honey pot. In fact, those pesky little flies were on top of the honey pot. And one of the young flies said to the others, "Look at all that glorious honey in there. I want to go in and get me some of that." Well, the older, wiser fly said, "Well, son, how are you going to get out?" "Ah, Gramps, don't worry about that. You're just spoiling our fun." And he jumped right in and started to gorge himself on that honey. And sure enough, he began to sink. He tried to flap his wings to get out, but the honey had already gotten on his wings. He was stuck, and he was sinking further. And as he realized what was happening, he looked up and said, "Oh, foolish me, my pleasure is my doom." The second Aesop's fable is about a dog and a wolf. The dog was a plump dog. For some reason, this plump dog had escaped from his house. And he met up with a wolf who was strong but thin. And the wolf asked him, "How is it that you're so fat and happy when I have to be out there every day struggling to find food, searching here and there and everywhere?" And the dog said, "Well, that's simple. My master brings me my food every day, the choicest portions of meat and food he brings to me." The wolf says, "Wow, that sounds great." And the dog says, "Well, would you like to come and join me?" "Well, sure," said the wolf. And they both headed down towards his house. And the wolf looked over at the dog and saw some marks on his neck and said, "What are those marks?" The dog was rather ashamed and said, "Those marks are from my chain. When I get home, my master will chain me up to the tree." The wolf stopped and said, "Oh no, that's not for me. I'd rather be hungry and free than well-fed and chained." My third story drives home the point about the moral of moderation. A pastor loved to play golf. It was his pastime, but this pastime soon turned into, it began to consume his life. He wanted more and more of it. And eventually it got to the point where He didn't even want to go in on Sundays to do his sermons anymore. And one day he got up the courage to actually not go in. And he called up a friend of his and said, "Can you do the sermon for me?" And the pastor, and of course the man said, "Yes, if you're feeling that bad, I'll do the sermon for you." And the pastor then immediately hung up the phone, got his golf clubs, and headed out to go golfing. Well, he was a smart man also. He didn't go golfing in his town because he didn't want to be caught in his deception. He ended up heading about 80 or 90 miles out of town. Well, he thought that he was getting away with this on his drive, but sure enough, there was somebody who was watching. And up in heaven, St. Peter saw what was happening. And St. Peter went to God and said, "God, can you believe this servant of yours? He is playing hooky. He's supposed to be in church, giving the people the good news of the gospel. And what's he doing? He's out playing golf." God said, "Oh, don't worry, Peter. Don't worry. I've got it under control." Well, the pastor got there and got out his clubs and went to the first hole, a long par 5. He got out his driver, went in, hit the best shot of his life straight down the middle of the fairway, 350 yards, like Tiger Woods hits them. It was amazing. The pastor was thrilled with this shot. Peter was not so thrilled. "God, what are you doing? You can't let him get away with this, having this much fun when he should be at church today. What are you doing?" God says, "Don't worry, Peter. I'll take care of it." Well, the pastor went up to his ball, which was halfway down. He only had about 280 yards to get. He had 4 more shots available to him to get up into the hole. He only had 280 yards left, took out a fairway wood, hit that thing beautifully, but then it started to hook to the left. It was heading towards a sand trap. No, but it went past the sand trap, hit over on the side, hit a rock, bounced up over onto the green, dribbled towards the hole, and dropped in the cup. This is amazing. He's jumping up and down for joy. It's better than a hole-in-one. This is a double eagle. This is rare beyond rare. Peter is frustrated up in heaven, says, "God, you let him hit the best shot of his life. This is the greatest memory he'll ever have." God says, "Who's he going to tell?" Our pleasures can sometimes become our addictions, and then they can turn into our prisons. Whether it be golf, whether it be food, drink, work, TV, sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever it is, none of us is immune to the lure of our desires. The moral of this story is pleasure without a good measure of self-control is a counterfeit treasure. Mr. Koch?
Take a minute and write a note to David.